Hello and welcome to Histories of Last. We're just entering West Virginia on the way to Steubenville, home of historic Fort Steuben, birthplace of singer, movie star, and Rat Pack member Dean Martin, and a Nutcracker Festival. It's the holidays, December 29th, our last road trip for 2023. And we hope you'll come along and join us as we see what there is to see in Steubenville, Ohio. So we're in the visitor center here. Some displays. So there's this Meriwether Lewis and his party came from Pittsburgh down the river in 1803, and they stopped here for a short visit. Oh, look, Debbie. Arrows. The 1st American Regiment. They built the fort and occupied it for a year. It was abandoned after just 1 year, according to the historical marker out there. So Fort Steuben only lasted about a year. It was built in the winter as winter quarters of 1786 for members of the 1st American Regiment who had been sent out here to keep squatters from squatting on the land that the federal government owned, and to protect the surveyors that were laying out the Ohio Territory in accordance with the Northwest Territories Ordinance. The land was to be used to give to Continental soldiers as their bounty, because the Continental Congress had no cash to pay them. So, and this is before the Constitution had been ratified. So the Continental Congress, which was controlling the country, so to speak, at that time, could not levy taxes to pay the soldiers. And this fort was abandoned in the spring of in the spring of 1787, where the soldiers moved on farther into the territory to protect the surveyors who had also moved on. And by 1790, it was gone. Interesting. So this was a 20th century reconstruction based on archaeology and descriptions from the period. Neat. And that's the archaeological dig in the middle right there. So we'll go into some of these buildings and see what there is to see. There's the commissary. Let's start with the commissary. They got big block houses here too. This is the commissary. Oh, look, there's a deer. Oh, cover your eyes, children. Oh, dear. Well, that's what they lived on. They had professional hunters called long hunters who would go out into the wilderness and bring back game to supplement the diet. The commissary was the person who was responsible for ordering, storing, and distributing the food supplies. No job is ever complete until the paperwork is done. This is nice. There's the latrines. I don't think we need to go in there. I think we all know what goes on in there. Oh, these are the latrines. Modernized. This is the hospital. Oh dear, there's a patient with a tourniquet around his leg. Oh dear. There's the keg of medicinal spirits. Wow, this is like a regular drugstore in here. The hospital at Fort Steuben was a necessity and yet a luxury. The doctor came to the fort from a very wealthy Philadelphia family. Oh, he stayed across the river in West Virginia, which then was still just Virginia. Wow. Cool. Oh, I just noticed leeches. Yee. Oh, wow. Oh, this is a frontier camp set up in here out of the weather. That's pretty neat. So the soldiers at Fort Steuben went out with the surveyors, and this is an example of what one of those camps might have looked like. And we have a couple of First Nations people who I'm sure were really happy to see these folks. Well, they got these guys living high on the hog with all this cast iron, wrought iron. Neat. Yep. All sorts. It looks like fishing tridents and harpoons. Antler tools. Look at the antler tools, antler handles, and so on. Neat. I like this kind of museum display because the descriptions are very limited. So Mrs. History's a Blast can't spend a half hour at every cabinet. Although she does have her brochure. Multiple layers of archaeology, starting with apparently the top layer was a 20th century parking lot, and they're working their way down through the early settlements. They don't really know what happened to the fort, whether it was burned or whether it was just dismantled. I think possibly as early as it disappeared, probably dismantled by early settlers because of the readily available construction materials. Debbie, what do you think is unusual about that wagon? What?
The straps on it?
No, it's not a Conestoga. It's the first wagon we've seen in one of these places that's not a Conestoga wagon. It's a regular wagon. What do you know? There's the blacksmith over there. There's the enlisted men's quarters. It's kind of crowded in there right now, so we won't go in. Go over here to the blacksmith. There's his forge. Some of his tools, a little worse for wear. Artificer's shop. Bearskin. Okay. Oh, look at the lathe. There's a lathe. This is a reproduction built by Thomas Williams in Wellsburg, West Virginia. Oh, it's a boring machine. It's not a lathe. I see what they've got. They've got a musket barrel down there at the end, and this is the drill that they're boring out the bore in the wrought iron rod that's being turned into a gun barrel. Neat. Okay. The artificer blacksmith would have repaired farming tools. Would have made some repairs to muskets probably. The gunsmith needed. Okay. This isn't too bad until you realize that they were probably sleeping two to a bunk, side by side. Each company would be responsible for a blockhouse. The first to finish would receive 6 gallons of whiskey. Well, that's an incentive. This is the quartermaster's building. The supply room. And there's a fur display here. Turtle shells, look at that. On the wall over here is a display of tools used in the preparation and dressing of furs. A lot of different specialty knives. That's a deer skin. Boy, that's nice and soft. There's a muskrat. Oh, yeah, boy. Raccoon, fox, beaver. Oh, man. He said beavers can weigh up to 70 pounds. Well, look at that. They get to be pretty big animals. Oh, there's one staring at you. That's really something. And a striped skunk. The quartermaster store was directly across the compound from the commissary. They know where it was. Okay. You see a vantage point there. But you know what? If this fort was to be defended against another European power, it would have been pretty vulnerable from artillery fire on the Virginia side of the river, don't you think? Look at that. The bluffs. Wow. But the vantage point back in those days from here, you could see up and down the river as well as to the west. So this is a good tactical position for controlling access to the soon-to-be settled Northwest Territories. David McCullough's book, The Pioneers, is a really good description of the earliest settlement, really, the earliest town, Marietta, down the river, Marietta, Ohio. Now this is posted as the Historians Hall. Oh, there's a slide projector. Oh, I see. This is classroom, maybe. Wow. Franciscan University is supervising the archaeological work here. Okay. Officers' quarters. Now they had rope beds with straw mattresses, probably. Here's the commanding officer's room, kitchen. There's a map of the fort. There we go. Well, we finally got to see Fort Steuben. Quite impressive. And now we're going to wander around town, historic North 4th Street, and see the street nutcracker exhibits. So let's move on. That's it for this time. I hope you enjoyed this video, and we'll take time to view some of our other ones.